Hey lady, welcome to the Confidently Her podcast, where we will take the journey together from being stuck in our past to confidently being in control of our future. Are you emotionally drained from all of the judgment placed on your life from yourself and others? Are you stuck looking back at what could have been instead of what is and what will be? If you said yes, then hang on tight. My name's Megan, and in this series, I will share the tools to help you take the wheel of life and lead you to find the confident her in you the way I found the confident her in me, without looking back or giving a damn about what other people think. There's an unstoppable woman inside of you who's ready to wipe the guilt, shame, fear, and anxiety out for good, who's ready to start living her life confidently on her terms and no one else's. So girl, let's do this because you are worth it. Hey lady, welcome back. I am so pumped you're here today because we're talking about eliminating insecurities and self-created flaws, which I am super passionate about. So grab a pen and a piece of paper if you need to take some notes, but we're going to really dive into our minds today. So the mind is such a complicated muscle. You are in control of what thoughts you feed it that in turn become beliefs. And these includes the thoughts that are serving you and also others that are not serving you. So why is it so dang hard to not be insecure, right? How do you change course? How do you become stronger and change that? So first, I'd like to mention that these can be created by a multitude of things. And when I say these, I'm talking your insecurities. Maybe your parents divorced at a sensitive age. Maybe your significant other was unfaithful. Maybe you were lied to by important people in your life. Or maybe you're struggling with physical body changes, right? Maybe you had a baby or you had cystic acne like I did, right? The list goes on. And when you go through something life-altering like those things that I just mentioned, it's also important to note that there's nothing wrong with you for having these feelings. But it's not going to serve you to continue to stay in a place of negativity, to stay in a place of insecurity and just self-sabotaging thoughts, right? It's time to get out of that. It's time to stop feeding your mind with negative ones and instead choosing to feed it with positivity. And I want to talk about today how to shift that internal voice reminding you of what you went through and telling you that you're not worthy. That because your parents didn't make it, your marriage won't either. That because the last couple of guys were unfaithful, that they all are. That because you had a baby and now have stretch marks, you're not beautiful. Or that because you have cystic acne or scarring, you won't ever be beautiful or feel beautiful, right? Or any other self-defeating phrases you have on repeat day in and day out. So let's just dive right in. So today I want to talk about an episode of Dr. Phil that I actually watched probably about 8 years ago. And I will never forget this episode because he talked a lot about the negative thought cycle. And he talked about how negative thoughts are so much more powerful than positive ones. That when we create a thought in our minds, for example, because we have stretch marks, we will never be beautiful. And maybe you can connect with that because that's something that I fed myself for a long time. And then we will then put that on repeat for years to come, much more so than if we had instead said, my stretch marks are no indication of how beautiful I am, right? So the negative thought is more so repeated in our minds more than a positive thought would be. And to add to that, when someone else tells you that your stretch marks or scars are gross, that thought goes into double time to create that belief that you are gross and in turn you're not worthy. And the thing is, it's not just about what happens to us, but instead it's how you think about it that shapes your psychological well-being. Remember how I've told you, life is only 10% of what happens to you externally. That means the other 90% is around our own choices and reactions, and then of course a little bit around our genetics. So, traumatic life events are the main reason most people suffer from anxiety and depression. However, the way you think about and deal with stressful events is as much of an indicator of the level of stress and anxiety you're feeling, which means, in short, your brain is super powerful. And ruminating and staying in these low places is horrible for your health. So how do you break this cycle? This is where the Cole attitude comes in. And this is something I learned in my years of therapy and want to share with you today to start implementing in your own life, because it's hugely important to take time to self-reflect on why you may be feeling or creating these thoughts for yourself. But it's also important to do so from a compassionate place, because if you think about it, if you're already a person feeding yourself with all of those negative thoughts, you're most likely going to tear yourself apart more once you bring the reasoning to the surface, right? You will believe on an even deeper level that you are worthless for not being able to get out of your own way. So back to the Cole attitude. C stands for curious, O stands for open, A stands for accepting, L stands for loving. You need to approach every negative thought with curiosity, girl, with an open and accepting mind, and most importantly, self-love. When you hear those insecure negative thoughts come in, try this. So as an example, as I've shared, one of my biggest insecurities for years has been my stretch marks, and maybe you can connect with this too. It's really hard to accept body changes, right? You think about back to your teenage years when you were just carefree in a whatever bathing suit you wanted to wear and you just felt good. And then you had kids and your hips got wider or your hair or skin changed. Like, body image is so difficult to accept, and especially when you go through major changes. So if you can connect with the idea of feeling insecure about your stretch marks, please continue to listen. So when those thoughts come in that you're not beautiful because you have stretch marks, take a moment and acknowledge it and just sit with that thought. The next thing I want you to do is curiously dig in and ask yourself, are you really less of a person because you have stretch marks? No, you're not, to save you some time. Do you think other people are less than because they have stretch marks? Probably not, right? I know I don't think less of people because they have stretch marks. So continue to narrow down how that thought developed with an open mind. And maybe it's because someone told you you were less than because of those stretch marks. Or maybe you created that belief on your own. Whatever you find in this layer of questioning, accept your thoughts, accept the answers, and just let yourself feel for a second. And then show yourself some serious love. Turn that negative into a positive. Remind yourself that your body did amazing things and created a freaking life, right? That it kept your babe safe for 9 months. That you are a freaking warrior, girl, and that stretch marks are your trademark. That you did something incredible and your body went through amazing things and is proof of that, right? It's about tackling that inner critic. And as you know, you are your own worst critic. Your internal critic is an internal dialogue that drives ruminating thoughts, self-blame, and self-loathing. It mocks us and it shames us, right? It scares us and it lures us into self-destructive behavior. For the longest time, I convinced myself that I was less than because I had stretch marks and loose skin, so much so that it drove me into an eating disorder, right? That self-critic tells us our marriage is going to fail. It tells us not to trust the people we love. It influences us not to try to reach a goal, that it's not worth trying to get into shape because those stretch marks aren't going away and you'll still be ugly after you lose the weight, right? It attempts to keep us safe by telling us to do this or to not do that. And every one of us possesses this voice in one form or another. And if you're like me, yours is more focused on the physical side of things, right? Your body flaws. And I'm using air quotes here. Don't bother working out because your stretch marks and cystic acne scarring will never allow you to be beautiful, right? Does your inner voice tell you that? Or maybe your inner voice lectures you on your love life. Don't bother dating. No one's ever going to love you. Remember those guys in the past that hurt you? That's all you'll ever attract. It's a little bitch, honestly. And the good news is, though, hopefully, like myself, you will learn, if you haven't already, that there is a side to you that is positive and confident. And even though one side is goal-oriented and life-affirming, and the other is self-critical and self-destructive, you can emerge from this battle victoriously. And the most important battle you may fight is the one going on inside of you, right? The real you versus your critical inner voice. And this process includes just 2 steps that I want to review with you today that I've learned along my journey. So the first step is to establish a zero tolerance policy for your voices. So for an example, if you are more of a shy person, your critical voice may say things like, don't bother going out in public today. You're way too awkward to be around people, right? And too often we believe these thoughts and listen to them without realizing we are the ones creating them. I'm like mind blown, right? You also need to become aware of what triggers these thoughts. So is it when you're going out in public? Maybe it's when you're with your friends, right? Recognizing those triggers so that you can become more aware of when you're actually just attacking yourself. The next step is to stop it. And I learned this from one of my therapists along the way too. And it sounds so simple and easy, but it works. So the next time a self-defeating thought pops in, say out loud, stop. Like literally say that word, stop. And if you're at work and you need to go to the bathroom to say it, do so. Go to your car, find a spot to say the word out loud. Then remind yourself, it's your inner critic, not you. Think about a time. Here's a perfect example. When you went shopping with a girlfriend, right? You left the house so pumped for Girls' Day. Then you try on this cute dress and you step in front of the mirror, right? You go to the clothing store, you're looking for some cute clothes for summer. And then you immediately start ruminating on thoughts like, my arms look huge. My belly isn't flat enough. My legs look scrawny. Then these thoughts start to escalate and turn into, girl, you are fugly. You need to work out more. You're gross, right? Does this sound familiar? You went from being in a fantastic mood that morning to feeling depressed and defeated. And this is why it's so important to implement that zero tolerance policy from step 1 and start telling yourself to freaking stop. When you find yourself overthinking and you notice that your thoughts have turned negative, you are far better off to stop ruminating and instead take action that goes against them, right? We talk about taking action all the time. And part of a zero tolerance policy is not allowing these voices to influence your actions. If they're telling you to be alone, invite a friend over for a visit. If they're berating your fitness journey, up your weights the next day. Prove it wrong. If they're telling you your scars are ugly, go to the grocery store without makeup confidently. And I promise you, girl, no one's going to point at you and laugh. You're not a circus clown because you have scars on your face, right? Take actions that move you closer to your most authentic self. When you first change something about yourself, you can expect your voices to get louder. So it's important to know that. But the longer you persevere in your actions, the quieter those annoying little voices will become. And it's really hard to attack yourself for being lazy when you exercise every day, right? Or to undermine your goals when you're actively pursuing them. So again, by initiating a zero tolerance policy, you are evicting that obnoxious roommate in your head. The way to do this is, again, by becoming aware of and not listening to these thoughts, creating self-compassion, and acting against the direction of your inner critic, not allowing your internal enemy to control your life. So the next time whatever you're feeling insecure about pops up and creates these thoughts within yourself, grab the boxing mitts, girl, right? Start fighting them, whatever it takes. You are not less than because of these self-perceived flaws. They do not make you who you are. You are in control, and it's time to kick out the annoying roommate within your head for good. Make space for more positive thoughts, and amazing things are going to start happening. We'll talk again soon, girl. Thank you so much for listening in today. If you really enjoyed this episode, I would so appreciate it if you shared it with a girlfriend or a sister. Better yet, tag me on Instagram or Facebook and I'll send you a personal thank you. We'll talk again soon, lady.